Welcome to the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast, the show for people who are ready to break out of survival mode in order to build a truly thriving life. I'm Amanda Solman, and along with Mark Jewell, my co-host and the founder and CEO of Mark Jewell Speaking and Training, we break down common roadblocks that keep people stuck surviving and share ideas to help you thrive each and every day. This week, Mark is back to talk to us about lessons that he learned from leech farming that he now applies in business and in life. We cover everything from the Karate Kid to which types of leeches are best for fishing to the value of being proactive and adapting and adjusting with your market. No matter what your background is, there's something in here for you. Check it out. To get us started, so when you first, you were giving me podcast episode ideas, and one of them was from Leech Farmer to business owner. I was like, what the heck does he want to talk about? So thankfully, you sent me some bullet points the other day to make previously mentioned bare bones outline. But for the sake of the people who maybe have not been listening to the podcast for super long, or for, maybe they're new to the page here on Facebook today. Can you first give us some background on why the heck are we talking about leech farming? Give us the story, your background, so then we can weave together some of these key points as we go further along.
Absolutely. So the inspiration, and I think you will enjoy this, the inspiration to actually create this episode came to me, I don't know, maybe 4 weeks ago, while I was watching Karate Kid with my girls. We were watching this, right? And so the whole point, the big setup, right? So this kid doesn't really have time to get ready for the fight in the way that, he doesn't have years of experience. So what does his mentor teach him, right? I mean, his mentor basically teaches him the whole wax on, wax off thing. So what does he do? He actually does the working of waxing all the cars, right? And then he has to stain the fence or paint the fence or whatever. And so he's learning these moves and literally when you think about it from a brain-based methodology, you're literally memorizing muscle memory into those different activities, right? So the wax on, wax off, the up, down with the painting, and then he paints the house. So he spends all this time learning these defensive moves, which are effectively pretty much what saves him. And then he learns a little bit of offense, which helps him to win the tournament in the end. So that's what goes down, right? So as I'm watching the movie, I watched it when I was a kid, but I don't think I've actually watched the movie since I was, whatever it came out in the 80s, right? So as I'm watching and I'm realizing wow, the thing that helped this kid win is his coach, his mentor, taught him through repetition, right? Taught him through actually going through something that wasn't necessarily related to the fighting aspect of getting into the tournament, but it was really about memorizing, right? The wax on, the wax off, the different defensive moves. And just right then and there, it just dawned on me as the movie is finishing up and it's kind of all, emotional at the end and I'm all inspired and motivated and everything. Holy shit, this is what my upbringing, growing up, son of a leech trapper, we were trapping a couple 1,000 pounds of leeches that we harvested ourselves. And I was literally every summer from basically 10 years old up until I think I was 23, every summer, that's what I did, right? Was rowing boats. You're out in the elements. You have to go through all of the things. And I learned a lot, and we'll get into the specifics along the way throughout the rest of this podcast. But I learned a lot that was just literally built into me, persistence, being able to, there are days where you go catching nothing. Right? There are days when you literally you check your traps and there's nothing. You don't get paid. You don't have, you're running out of money to buy bait, whatever, all the things. And so as you're going through that now, owning a completely different business, I do zero trapping anymore, other than maybe whatever selling could be equated to hunting and trapping. I suppose we could come up with an analogy, but that's about it. Right. So it's a very, very different business that I'm in these days. But so much of what I learned is just literally hardwired into my psyche and into my body now. And so when we go through some of the challenges in the business, it's really easy for me to fall back on that. So that's what we want to talk about today. That's where the inspiration for this particular podcast episode came from. And that's the direction we're going. So that's what's up.
Awesome. Love it. So one of the things actually that Wade and I just did on a recent podcast was basically a top 5 list. And based on what you sent me, I was figuring we can kind of do the same thing. So does that sound like a plan to you?
I think we're in. I think that is exactly the method we want to use for this particular one.
Awesome. So talk me through leech trapping to business. Lesson number 1 you said was you get to get out early, or at least get out. So what does that mean?
Well, I mean, you've all heard the phrase, the early bird gets the worm. And in a lot of ways that definitely applies. I can remember days waking up to my old man yelling up the stairs saying, the wind's going to blow today, right? Not, Mark, get your ass out of bed. Not, hey, it's time to get up. The wind's going to blow today. Okay. And we're like, what the hell does that mean? Like, to a normal person. What that means is the wind is going to blow today. So by 10 o'clock, you're going to have 2 or 3 foot waves bouncing your ass around in a little 10-foot John boat while you're wearing your waders and you have all your stuff out there, and it makes your day miserable. So if you don't want to have a miserable day, then you need to get out early and get ahead of it so that maybe you only have 1 or 2 ponds and you're done trapping, you're done running your traps by noon. So you start at 4, you start at 5, you get out there and you get ahead of it. Okay. And so, that's, one of those things when you think about what's going on in the marketplace, right? The one thing that's consistent in the market is going to be change, right? The winds are going to shift to different directions. There's going to be, right now, corn prices are a tiny bit more favorable than they were, say, a year ago. And in our market, that makes it a little bit easier to sell. So what do we get to do? We hit the ground running, like we're prospecting, we're filling our pipeline, we're doing the things that are required in order to get ahead and capitalize on, fair winds, fair temperatures, so to speak, in the moment. One thing that's consistent that we know is that's going to shift. Right? So the goal is to get out ahead of it, make the investments now. Maybe that means less profit this year, but it means that we're further ahead of the game next year. I mean, just the different things that fall in. And so to me, that's a completely natural concept, let alone getting up early and starting your day and having a good morning routine and like all the habits, would be really, really honest with you. Like there's a lot of days I don't want to get up. But I had that example from my old man, showed to me as a kid, like, this is what you do. You get up at 5 o'clock every day, you have your morning routine and you're out, working by 5:30, 6 o'clock. And so that may not be the exact routine that I follow, but it's really hard for me to sleep. Like the one day of the week I don't set an alarm is Saturday morning, and it's really hard to sleep past 7. Like it's something I have to get no sleep the night before in order to sleep during the day now. So what it is, it's muscle memory, and it's built in. It's sort of hardwired in. You can adopt these at any point, but the point is, like, I learned a lot as a kid growing up on a leech farm, learning to get out there and trap leeches. Here is one other thing. So from a coaching business perspective, I believe we are ahead of the market as far as what we do and how we offer it. The way that we do it, our style is very different. Within our specific niche, there are not a lot of people doing, we may get compared to somebody, but I have been through many people's programs that we've get compared to. It's not the same. And so we're making some waves in the marketplace that way, being in a way, first or close to first to market with the exact way that we go about running our business. And so when I was growing up, there's a little bit of a sense of urgency when the spring rolls around. So the way the leech season works is you wait for the ice to go out up in Minnesota. And the rule for bodies of water is that, if you get your traps in the pond first, nobody else can put a trap within 50 yards of yours. That is literally a state law. And so what you literally have is guys driving around looking for open water with their traps and their waders and their boats waiting for the opportunity to get their traps in first. Right? Or you go out and you negotiate with the farmer who owns the land around that particular piece of water if it's not next to a roadway, and you're doing deals with them over the winter, just saying, hey, I want to make sure it's okay. I come through and, open and close your gate, to get back to the farm, to the pond or whatever it is. So you're always working on building those relationships ahead of time. Right. So you're getting out early before it's too late. And, I'll just say, here's what I see a lot in the marketplace. Like right now, the agronomy selling season should be over for a lot of people. But we're still out there hustling. Like there's a lot of salespeople in our business that are, coming to our coaching programs right now who are behind because they didn't get it done early. Right. And obviously the customer plays into that equation a little bit as well. But that just means we got to get better. It means we got to get better. So that's one of the key things. Like it was, built in right up front and early on in my life. You get out early, you get your traps in, you kind of stake your claim, your ground, and you put your flag in into this part of your business. And, this is yours. So that's one of those key principles I learned early on is, you get out early, get ahead of the changing winds because it's coming.
Yep.
Yep.
One of the things too, just observation as you were talking, both about kind of leech trapping, getting out early in sales, as well as some of the examples you just shared in terms of like, workout, appreciation for your spouse. One of the things that comes to mind on this idea of you need to get out early or you get to get out early is that sometimes that means getting out early and putting in the work, not knowing what the end result is going to be. Right. Mm-hmm. So I often think like, I'm getting out early. I'm getting ahead of the curve with my fitness because I don't know what this body is going to look like at 50, 60, 70 years old. Right. And I'm trying to sort of get out early right. I don't know what this relationship is going to look like 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So I've got to get out early. Mm-hmm. I may not know what that farmer is going to buy 6 months down the road, but if I start now, I increase my chances of making sure that it's maybe at least I get 100%. A look from him. Right. And so that's just something that sticks out to me as you were talking is like, this is not necessarily getting out early because you know what the result is going to be if you do. It's getting out early in spite of not knowing that you might not be sure what that's going to look like.
Yeah. Well, and it's getting proactive in the market as opposed to getting reactive. Right. I would be lying if I said there were, if there weren't some days that I didn't wait until the wind started blowing because whatever I wanted to sleep in because you're 16 and like, you're not thinking ahead on that shit. So, you come in at the end of the day exhausted, because it was horrible out there and the wind blew 20, 30 miles an hour all day long. And, so what happens then is you row up to a trap, you pull the trap while you're checking the trap, the wind blows you back 30, 40 yards and you have to row back to the spot. Right. And like, that's how often do we do that in business, right? Like we get to a point, whatever, we forget, we take our eye off the ball, so to speak, we lose focus. Right. And then we got to do all this makeup work. Like I'm renowned for that, probably because I did it a lot. Like I actually subconsciously programmed in that behavior. So anyway, I want to, not to push too fast, but to get on to the next one, which is the second, I guess, concept or key principle from learning to do this and growing up in this behavior is that you get to set traps, right? You get to set traps, so you get to put you get to basically put yourself out there in order to start attracting what you want. And, a mistake that a lot of people in leech trapping make is they put their traps in the water and they just wait for something to come. If somebody's just trying to catch enough leeches to go fishing with, they'll just say, well, I'll just throw it anywhere. Okay. Well, there are 653 different species that we know about of leeches on the planet. Not all of them are good for fishing. And it was gross, right? See your face. So, right. It's gross. So not all of them are good for catching fish. Some of them are dangerous. Some of them can kill you. Some of them can suck your blood. Some of them can't. There's all kinds of different things to know about leeches. And so how do you put your trap in the right place with the right bait, with the right style of trap in order to attract the right type? right? And then minimize the stuff that you don't want. The same is true in business, right? So we get to identify like what is an ideal candidate, an ideal size of company, or whatever it is that you're, selling to. What, for us, we look for, they've got to have at least, 50 to 500 employees, maybe 50 to 1,000 employees is an ideal sort of range, and a certain number of dollars, and maybe a certain geographical location. And then, so what do? Like, we start creating content. We have a podcast, we have a website, I've been doing Facebook videos for 5 years. So we start putting ourselves out there in certain ways that attract people to us, right? That match up with our energy, with the type of service that we offer, with all the things. And so, the concept is effectively the same. Once we get them into a conversation, right? So we get them into the trap. It's not a trap, it's sales. So I don't want anybody to think about or equate that to trapping, but once we get them interested in what we have to offer, right? And then we got to look at, okay, what's the bait? Okay, what's the draw? What's the attraction? And so the way we do that is by positioning our value through asking good questions and understanding as much as we can about their business to see, if our product is even a fit. Right. And there were other things that we had to do. So like, after we would catch the leeches, we'd have to bring them home and sort them by hand into 3 different sizes. And then while you're sorting leeches by hand, you have to take out all of the little shrimps that come up with your traps. And you have to sort out all the old bait. And you have to sort out what we literally call bloodsuckers, which are the type of leeches that can latch onto you and puncture your skin. Side note, fun fact about leeches is those that you use for fishing, they can stick onto your skin. They can't actually puncture your skin to suck your blood, so you're safe. So if you're getting them at a bait shop, unless they've left 1 or 2 in there, they can't. But if you leave the wrong ones in there, then they can get to you. So that, we try to get all the blood sucking clients that don't fit. I don't know. We try to, you try to sort out though, like, what type of client does this fit into? Does this fit into one of our package programs, right? Where they might have enough clients to fit into, say, our stack program, and they can commit 12, minimum of 12 coaching clients. Or do they fit into just a regional event, right? It's a smaller client. Maybe they can only send 1 or 2 or 3 people. That's cool. So now we know how to approach them in different ways. So it's the same concept, right? But the biggest thing, the principle here is you get to set your traps out. So where are those customers at? What do they look at? What are they open to? It was the exact same thing that we did literally 500 times a day, every day, from the 2nd or 3rd week in April until the middle of July. So there's rote memory around that. And I'm just, I've been reminded, as we've learned how to market and as we've learned how to sell, within our business, like, it's the exact same process, just a different type of bait, and we're attracting a different type of product.
Yes, let's not compare our customers to leeches. That would not be a good comparison.
Let's allow that to be incredibly clear, right?
And I am learning so much about leeches in all of this conversation.
Knew.
Like, if you are listening to this in the podcast, you should really come back to this video later so that you can see all of the disgusted faces I'm making, because This is ugh. Yeah. I don't like fish, much less leeches. And yeah. So anyway, but I can appreciate the lesson. So
that's right.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I think that one makes a lot of sense. Really, I think that's a good apples to apples comparison. So talk to me about lesson number 3, which you said is you get to check the traps, AKA wins and losses.
Yeah. So, over the course of let's just take a day of, trapping leeches, you're going to check anywhere from 400 to 600, on average 500 leech traps, and especially during the busy seasons or the busiest part of the season. So not every trap has success. Not every trap has leeches in it when you pull it up. Sometimes it has nothing. Sometimes it just has the bait left in it that you put there the day before. And so, sometimes you lose. Right. Sometimes it has a net zero, sort of result, or less than 0. And sometimes they're just so full, there's, a pound or 2 pounds of leeches in one trap. 2 pounds would be pretty extraordinary, but, there's a bunch in there. And so your success, you'll find sometimes certain parts of the pond trap better. Sometimes you'll find that, there's a rain system or a weather system moving in. And so what's interesting is if it stormed last night, the leeches probably didn't trap today. And so you even know going out that because there was a storm last night that your traps are probably going to be largely empty, but you still have to rebait. And there's nothing more dejecting than knowing that you're going to go in and get rejected, right? Or you're going to get a no. So let's equate that to sales as an example, right? I mean, if you know, like for whatever reason, like, the market is down, let's say, the corn market, the soybean market, something went down and all of a sudden the customer mentality has dropped, it's not as positive as it was last week or yesterday or whatever. But you still have to go. You still have to go have that conversation. So, one of the groups that we worked with in the grain industry this last year, and I know Wade worked with this group a lot. Our goal from a coaching perspective was even when the market wasn't moving and nobody wanted to talk to the grain originator, we coach them to still go out and have conversations about something else, right? Or get to know their business better, or when it does get better, what do you have, or what do you want to do? And just like start having conversations, even when they're not ready to sell, right? Even when they're not ready to do business. And this is one of the number one things, guys, like I see salespeople all the time. Oh, they're not ready. It's the wrong time of year. How do you know? Right? You're not there in their mind all the time. So you have no idea what's really going through their mind and how they're going to act tomorrow or when they might decide. And you probably don't know their cash flow system well enough. You probably don't know enough about their business to be able to make that decision for them, that you don't go ask or you don't go talk. So it's a constant process of getting out there, trying again and trying again and trying again, knowing that out of 500 tries, like you're only successful 25 to 30% of the time. And that was it. I mean, that was what I made my money on from the time I was, 10, 12 years old, all the way till I was 23. We're talking a decade plus of my life. And that was where my summer money came from. And then college money when I got older is literally 20 to 30% success ratio in checking traps. Interesting how sales has a really funny correlation all these years later, has a really funny correlation to the same percentage of closing. And so you've got to check the traps, right? And you're gonna lose sometimes. So what does that mean? Well, everything is feedback, first of all. Okay. So if a trap literally has nothing for like 1, 2, or 3 days, you move the trap. Okay, that's just the general rule. If it's not getting anything, move it. You might move it closer to shore. If the temperature drops, you might move it further away from shore because the leeches will gravitate towards wherever the water is the warmest, right? So if it gets colder in the shallower waters, and say in the middle of May, they may move away from shore. In the summer, when it gets really warm, you want to get that trap hung up in the weeds and shallower water because that's where they tend to hang out.
I'm now learning all the places not to go in any bodies of water at all of these certain times.
Yeah. So fun fact. Okay. So let's just say like lakes as an example will typically have fish. By and large, if the lake has fish, you will have very, very few leeches because the fish will be defending you from all those leeches. They will have eaten them by that point. So you should be safe for the most part, unless you're going to some slough, in some farmer's pond and up there in Michigan at some point, Amanda. So you should be good. But you have to take everything as feedback. It's not there to offend you. It's not there to hurt you. It's not there to knock you down. Like 400 times you're going to lose today out of 500. And what does that mean? It means you just get to move the trap. That's it. Like it's all feedback, or maybe like you notice the ones that are catching the most, right? And so then you try to mimic that in as much as you can. The shoreline always changes, and it's not always the same all the way around a 30-acre pond of water, but you try to do the best to mimic what worked over there. So everything becomes feedback, and the same thing is true. What's working with one customer might work adapted, towards another customer. If you're not getting 30% closing ratios from a sales perspective, like you probably need to do something different. Right? If you're getting rejected time and time again, just had this conversation with a client this morning who's having trouble closing. Okay. He's not even a part of our sales program technically, but his close rate is just not where he would like it to be. And just as it turns out, the feedback is we're not doing a good enough job at the discovery process up front. So I can't position the value of my product, right? So then it becomes about price. So as long, whenever it becomes about price, then that's it. So sometimes you got to go where they are. You got to just look at the feedback and be cool with that. So the other piece, and this just kind of goes hand in hand with this, is you can't manage what you don't measure. So what did this pond produce last year? What did we do here? How much bait did we use? We always would measure roughly those kind of things. How much did we catch last year? In some cases, you have to manage. So if we took a lot of leeches out of there this year, we might let that one sit for a couple of years, or we manage, or we just do a little bit of trapping to kind of see how it's doing. If the leech size starts to decrease, right, then you might just sort of come up with a longer term plan. The same thing is true, with your clients. You might do a big deal up front and then little by little, or maybe you just do a little bit every year. Right. So you have to look at each particular one. So we're doing the same thing in our business. We just look at, what's the appropriate, can we continue growing with this as we grow them? In some cases, what we do is we would literally stock it with small leeches in order to trap them back. Right. So we let them release them into the wild in the hopes that we can catch them back. So there's, lots of different things that you get to do in order to get the net result. So you get to check traps. You're going to win. You're going to lose. And it's all feedback. Business is the same. It's exactly the same.
Yep. Which a lot of that actually encompasses your number 4 lesson, is that you get to adapt and adjust. So any additional thoughts on that piece of, like, it's one thing to know, yes, here's where I'm experiencing success, here's where I'm not experiencing success, but the real rubber meets the road when I actually decide to do something about it. So in terms of adapting and adjusting, any other thoughts there?
Yeah. So, as I was thinking about, what did I learn by adapting and adjusting constantly? It wasn't just the day to day, right? A lot of it was the mindset around being in that business. And so you have to constantly be watching your, what's your attitude? Right. And so we had a lot of, I remember a lot of conversations. My dad was a lifelong trapper. This was the number one thing that he ever did. In fact, I recently just got in contact with the son of one of his old trapping buddies. And I acquired a whole bunch of pictures from when he was a trapper back in his 20s and 30s, up in Michigan and down in Georgia and all over the place. So so he knew very well, like, what it's like to lose, what it's like to win. And so he would always be watching my attitude, because some days I would come back dejected, because I didn't catch anything, or it didn't work, or it was too windy, or we got rained out, or whatever. And so he'd be constantly coaching my attitude. So, the business world is the same way, right? It's really easy to get down and get dejected and when things aren't going your way. But the reality is it always averages out as long as you don't quit. And that was one of the big lessons that he taught me back at that time frame and back in that part of my life is you just keep going at it no matter what, even when it gets hard, even when it sucks. And like literally it sucked some days because it was the leech business. But like whenever that happens, like you just keep going. Even if like you go 7 days without catching anything, like it might just be time to pull traps and go to a new pond. Okay. And that's pretty, ponds will stop trapping. Well, that was one way that you adapt and adjust, but you're always watching your mindset. And I know he'd be watching mine and coaching that. So that's one of those ways that we have to adapt and adjust our mindset and our attitude in the business world constantly. And just what I see a lot of people not doing is not paying attention. And so when we get down, so here's what happens. This is very human. When we get down because things got tough, or our experience is not matching up with our expectations, we start to feel like, well, I'm not good enough to make it happen. I'm not as good as he was, or I'm not as good as that person, or whatever story you decide to tell yourself. And so we buy into that. And unfortunately, without the right coaching, without the right, manager to lift you up or give you the right feedback, what do? You buy the story, and that becomes norm. So we see this a lot. So a lot of people come into our programs literally surviving in their business because they're so dejected. it's not even dejected anymore. It has just become normal. So there's no conscious thought process that it could be better. And so that's adapting and adjusting, is learning, seeing that it could be different. And then we have to adapt our mindset and adjust our process, or adjust our practices, adjust our standards in order to start having a better result.
It's a mindset and a skill set thing, right? So it was funny you say that. So this morning I sent out a text message to one of the coaching groups I'm working with, just kind of a midweek check-in, scale of 1 to 5, how's the week going? And somebody mentioned, things are going fairly well. I'd say it's about a 3, still got some things to do. And that was, the next question was, what will take you from a 3 to a 5? Is it a mindset or is it a skill set? Because to your point, right, both are adapting and adjusting. So what is it that's keeping you from 3 to 5, and how do we change up what we're doing, or take more action or whatever? So good stuff. And I bet you hold on to that "the Leech business sucks" joke just to pull out whenever you can, don't you?
It's always like, it's always in the holster, just ready to come out at so.
And because I like cheesy dad jokes, I'm totally here for it.
There you go. So some funny side story. So when I took my girls down to Texas to do the keynote for Texas Grain and Feed, they literally, the girls had never heard the story that I'm about to tell next. And so this was like cheesy dad joke all the way. So they thought the whole, leeches suck business was super funny, or the leech business sucks. That was a funny thing. And then this other thing that I'm about to get into was quite hilarious for them. So my girls are 10 and 8, and this stuff was, they're really interested in like the past history, because they don't, my old man's gone. They don't get to know that side of my life. They don't get to grow up around that piece of my life. So they like this little peering into my history, especially for the things that I screwed up with. So
awesome. Well, which is a good segue into lesson number 5.
Yes.
You are the only one that can save you. Tell me more.
So, here's, I'm just going to frame this up. A lot of you right now are waiting for your boss, your manager, your spouse, your kid, your dog, somebody to come along and save you, to make your day better, to make your business better, to help your mindset, to help your approach. We just see so many people so reliant on everybody else. And I'm not talking about teamwork, right? Like, obviously within our team, we rely on each other to do certain things. And that's a wholly different deal. But what I'm talking about is, like, when you're sitting here waiting for somebody to come and make your life better, or make it easier, or help you find more leads, or whatever, guys, nobody's coming to save you. Like, this is you get to go out and make that happen. And so it became never more evident than in my life when I was trapping. I was like 2 weeks from my 18th birthday. I had my chest waders on. It's cold out. The wind is blowing. And, there were 2 safety rules that we had in the Jewell Bait Company, which was, really just one: don't fall out of the boat. Like, that was it. Like, and the 2 reasons were, like, you'll either sink, or you'll go in head first and the air will get stuck in your feet of your waders, and then you'll just float there till you drown. And so I know that sounds real positive, right? But those were realistic outcomes. Like, if you fell out of a boat ever, I mean, that was the real danger. So I tell the story in our keynote, so I'm leaving out a couple of the details, and I'm leaving out a little bit of setup because we've got a little bit of a time frame here. But I'm rowing the boat a couple weeks before my 18th birthday. Long story short, I go out. Like, I literally fell out of the damn boat. I did everything wrong I did everything you're not supposed to do. And what the end result was, I was stuck, clinging on to the side of my boat, trying to keep myself from sinking. And in my mind, that was the reality of what was about to go down. As I literally had fallen out of this boat, and there was nobody around to help. There was nobody around to come and, like, wade out there and help me fix my problem. There was nobody around for miles to get me out of this sticky situation. I had 2 options: figure it out or drown. Like, those were or hang on to the boat and die of hypothermia. Like, it was cold out. The water was 36 degrees. The air temp was 38 degrees. You had hypothermia or drowning. Those were the 2 things that were coming your way unless you figured it out. And so as I'm clinging onto the side of this boat, can't quite figure it out, it finally dawns on me that the water's not any more than 5 freaking feet deep, and I'm 6'2", right? So the funny part of the story is that all I had to do was stand up. But let's be honest, man, like as I think about that, like I tell that story a lot, and that is one of the most relevant things to life. Like so often we panic, right? We panic because this detail's not perfect, or this person didn't sign up, or that customer decided to go a different direction, right? We panic because the market shifts. We panic because Trump said this, or Obama said that, or whatever, the Canadians, the Mexicans. I mean, this is all the different things that I'm thinking about stuff that's going on in the news right now on a global scale. People panic, right? And it literally affects people's lives, like financially, in a massive way. And so but what we do is we start to panic. And the reality is, at the end of the day, usually the solution is much simpler than we think when we're going through what's difficult. Usually it's much simpler, and it's really all we have to do is sort of stand up. And so the reality is, in my situation, in that particular story, I came very, very close to just doing something really stupid because I was panicking. Because I knew that nobody was going to save me. So where do I see this exact same thing with our clients? Where have I done this exact same thing in my own life? So often, like, we start to panic because things aren't going perfectly at work. We start to feel like we're drowning in our work. We're not getting it. We're not selling enough. We're not getting enough results. We're afraid to talk to our boss. We're afraid to admit our vulnerabilities. And so what do? We panic. Right? And we quit, we jump ship thinking that the grass will be greener at the next job. Right? Or I freak out. Right? And I yell at my boss, or I say, you got to transfer me, or something, right? We do this kind of stuff all the time instead of really just reaching out and asking for a little bit of help, or just breaking it down into bite-sized pieces and taking it one step at a time. Right? So that's a very short way to get at that lesson, but that's really it. Like, I just see a lot of people who are in panic mode, and we forget that it's totally normal and it's okay to be that way. So be okay with that, and know that the solution to get out is usually simpler than you're making it. And the story about the problem is usually much bigger than the actual problem itself. So if you just pause, right? Get out your journal, take a minute to meditate, whatever, we know that workplace stress or workplaces are the number one cause of stress for people globally. And so when we get stressed, we don't think clearly. So you literally take 5 minutes to pause and breathe and maybe listen to a quiet song, right? Something like that, just to get your head around the problem, and remember to ask for help. And there's numerous other consequences to not doing that. But there's massive upside to just getting in the habit of pausing to reflect and think, okay, what's one way out of this? What's one way through this? And it's usually that simple answer starts to come through. So lesson is, don't fall into your boat. But if you do, okay, look for a much more simple solution than panicking in the water and taking yourself down. So those are the 5 principles right there. I mean, like, as I think about what are the things that I do now, or that we do as a company now, that have helped us create this massive momentum in the marketplace, to develop a reputation, to help our clients get results, like all the things along the way. Literally, just one day, I don't know, a couple months ago, I ran the P&L in QuickBooks. It was like, wow, like, we've done $1 million in business in the last 12 months. It wasn't, it's all inside of 1 year, but over that last 12 months, there's, that much money came through the door. And, started thinking, like, I probably had dreams of, making $1 million trapping leeches when I was 16 years old, and it wasn't possible. May not have been possible in that business. I don't know. But what I did learn was the lessons in that business that are just really easy now that I reflect back on it, that all I do is just put them back into place today. And it's really easy to take the stuff that you learned from your past, and now you're super relevant and you're super qualified to teach that to somebody else and say, hey, it's okay to just, pause, reflect, stand up, shift your direction a little bit. Yes, sometimes you're going to lose, Sometimes you're not going to get the result that you want, but you just keep going anyway. Sometimes the mindset's not going to be there. So what do? You adapt and you adjust the mindset in order to, be a little bit more positive and get through one more day. Maybe you go out of your way to do something nice for somebody else, and that helps you, stay positive. You get to put your targets out there. You get to set your traps out there. You've got to put in the work, put in the marketing, do the Snapchats, do the Facebook Lives, create the blog post, record the podcast, whatever it is. That's what we do in our business. In your business, obviously it might be different, but you put the traps out there. You put the bait out there for people to start coming into you. Sometimes it's cold calling. I'm not below that. I'll pick up the phone and cold call anybody right now. Give me their number. If I think they're a good prospect for the business, right? And then, last but not least is, you got to get out early, get out there ahead of your competition, go when they're not going, get up before they do, get out in front of them. If you got a new product, be the first to market with it. If you got a new idea, be the first to market with it, differentiate out there. Don't wait until the wind shifts in the marketplace to react to it, get out ahead of it. So I think everything else is survival mode. So we're here for a lot more than that. So any last questions or thoughts on the things, Amanda?
No, thank you very much for teaching us all about leech trapping.
It's a dual lesson. It's two things in one. This is a double podcast.
It is. I mean, I've heard a lot of the things you're talking about, but I have never learned about how to trap leeches specifically. So I appreciate that secondary lesson there. Very good. No, I don't have anything else. I think I'm good.
Perfect. So guys, there are lots of other great things that you can learn if leech trapping is not your thing. Maybe some other things are, like managing or leadership or mindset development or whatever. And you can find all that over at markjewelltraining.com. Again, that's markjewelltraining.com, houses the vast majority of all of our resources. Come and hang out with us on Snapchat and on Twitter and on what's the other one? Instagram. So we have all those things too. Just, search Mark Jewell, Amanda Salmon, whatever, you'll find us over in those places as well. And for sure, continue following along here on the Facebook, because there's more greatness to come. We are just getting started with this thing. So markjewelltraining.com for all of your blog posts, podcast resources. If you happen to be watching this in some other place besides the podcast, because you've already downloaded it, go to your podcast app and subscribe to the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast, and get that on your iTunes, on your Android, and listen along. There's like almost 70 episodes now that you should be tuning into. So pumping out lots of great content, trying to provide value for you guys and make an impact there. So let us know how that's impacting you. Come connect with us in the social places, and we look forward to that. With that, you guys, survival's dead. It's your time to thrive today. Let's go get it. Have a great one.
Thanks again for tuning into this week's episode. If you like what you heard, make sure to jump over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. We appreciate the feedback, and it helps other people find the show. As always, if you're looking for more resources to go from surviving to thriving, check out our website at www.markjewelltraining.com. That's Jewel with 2 L's. And you can find us under Mark Jewell Speaking and Training on all the major social networks. Remember, survival is dead. It's your time to thrive today. See you next week.